Hello and welcome to another SkaredCast tactical video. This is video 13 of the series, where we look at the role of Grotesques, the creations and aberrations of the homunculi. Let's get started. Hello and welcome to another SkaredCast tactical video. This is Skari, your grateful host, and we're talking about the Dark Eldar new codex. This is video 13 of a series of tactical videos, and we're talking and discussing about Grotesques. So of course this video will be in two parts. I will talk about basic Grotesques and their uses within the Eldar army as a newer player and as a veteran player. And then I'll talk a little bit about how they're useful within the homunculi Coven detachment rules, because they get a lot added to them. So I have been using Grotesques for quite some time, ever since they were released in the last edition. And the model itself is relatively static. I think it's like $30 a model, and it's one pose. And that's it. So feel free to convert them from rat ogres or regular ogres or terrorgeists, not terrorgeists, the like Vargulfs or whatever that you can get from the vampire counts range. And let's get started, shall we? Though they begin their existence as Dark Eldar, Grotesques undergo a hideous rebirth as punishment for some real or perceived slight to the homunculi. Over the course of months or even years, the hapless victim's body is pumped full of growth elixirs and subjected to torturous surgical enhancement until they become a subservient, weaponized horror whose only desire is to serve its dark masters. When given the command to kill, these meat hulks transform into engines of destruction. Racks of syringes dump potent stimulants into their ichor stream, and veins throb near to bursting as tube-punctured hearts are forced into overdrive. With great muffled roars, the Grotesque thunder into battle, butchering all within reach with great hook, claw, and cleaver until command to cease, or hacked bloodily into many pieces. So Grotesques are pretty straightforward. They are meat grinder tanks. Aim them at something, run them at something. So let's see if the stats reflect this. They start with a minimum unit of 3, and they're 35 points apiece, and they can go up to a unit of 10 at 35 points apiece. They are weapon skill 1, weapon skill 4, ballistic skill 1. They are strength and toughness 5. Very strong. They are 3 wounded, so they have like 3 wounds. They're initiative 4 and have base 3 attacks. Their leadership is appalling, it's only 3, and they do have a gnarl skin, like Rax and Homunculi, of a 6+. One of them may be upgraded to an aberration that has +1 attack and +1 leadership for 10 points. That's it. So what makes Grotesques tick? Well, let's look at their war gear. They're designed to go up and just start grinding people down. With their high strength, high toughness, and high number of attacks and decent weapon skill, and decent initiative, they will start getting there and start mauling stuff. So they do have a 6+ save. They have a close combat weapon, and every single Grotesque is armed with a flesh gauntlet. Now, if you remember what we talked about in the racks, a flesh gauntlet is a special close combat weapon that is a melee weapon, so they will be getting an additional attack for close combat. And it is a poison 4+ weapon that has the lethal dose special rule, which means that any roll of a 6 to wound will cause instant death. Let's think about that for a sec. They can go into multi-wounded creatures, monstrous creatures, hive tyrants, like turning monstrous creatures, or swarms, or other things like that, and just instant kill everything. Units with feel no pain, things like that, and on 6s to wound, you're ignoring all that, making them very, very dangerous. Their high strength means that their poison 4+ is most often going to be re-rolled against anything that's toughness 4 or less, and you're wounding on 3s with re-rolls, which is fantastic. So it's really nice to see that they have gotten some tweaks here and there that really make them appealing as a hard-hitting, just damage-dealing unit. And they're resilient to boot. So let's look at their special rules. They are bulky, so they take up 2 spaces in a transport. They come stock with feel no pain, like racks. They do have night vision. They're never going to really use it unless they're on a quad gun or something. They do have power from pain, so they benefit from the power from pain rules. And they have a rule called rampage, which means that in combat, if your side is outnumbered by the enemy side in a combat, depending on how big the combat is, if they're outnumbered by any stretch of the imagination, you roll a d3, and every single grotesque in that unit gets d3 extra attacks. I've used that in a couple of games already, and run 3 grotesques, 4 grotesques in a big unit of Space Marines. Charge in, you have 3 base attacks, plus 1 for 2 close combat weapons, plus 1 for charging, and then at least 1 for being outnumbered, up to 3. So each grotesque could potentially have up to 8 attacks on the charge when they charge into a unit that is outnumbering them. So throw them into hordes of gaunts, orcs, guardsmen, you just name it, or Necron warriors. They will mulch through pretty much everything, and I love them for it. Now, they do have a few different options. You can add up to 7 models to the unit, meaning you can take a small unit of 3, you can take a big unit of 10 if you're going to foot slog or webway portal them down. And any model can replace their gun with a liquefy gun for 15 points. Now, a liquefy gun, template weapon, strength 3, AP D6. So can be very, very good, or can be absolute trash. So before you could only take 1, now every single one can take 1. For the points, I don't believe it's worth it. I run 1 in each of my units simply to have the template just in case. And I don't mind spending the 15 points here or there, but don't get too crazy in terms of spending it on every single one. If you're looking at a unit like that, Wraithguard with D sides, a toughness 6 base, and I believe they're better in that sense. Now, you can have an aberration, and an aberration can choose specific war gear. So it can take any of the weapons of torture. Now, the weapons of torture are either a mind phase gauntlet, a flesh gauntlet, a scissor hand, or an agonizer. They range from 5 points to 25 points. Now remember, he comes with a flesh gauntlet, so let's cut that out of there. He doesn't need a flesh gauntlet. So you can pay 5 points for a mind phase gauntlet, and so he would replace his close combat weapon with him. Means you'd have a flesh gauntlet and whatever else you buy him. So that'd be cool because you can kind of choose whichever one you want to use depending on your target. Mind phase gauntlet has concussive, and then the scissor hand gives you rending. So, and then the agonizer's just AP3. Personally, if you were to buy him an upgrade, I would go for the scissor hand simply to have the rending option in case you have a character in the grotesque unit that can't take on a character that has a 2+ armor save, and you can make the aberration soak up and tank the character in a challenge with a weapon that could do some damage. So it is an extra 20 points to upgrade to aberration and a scissor hand. So you can do it. Personally, I would just buy another grotesque. That's what I would do with the points. Like I'd pay, I'd save on the 20 points and just add another grotesque. Like that, you have more wounds, you have more combat, you have more staying power, and just whittle stuff people down with lots of wounds. So all in all, those are the options that you have with them, and they can take a dedicated transport raider, so that you can put them into a raider. Remember, they're bulky, so maximum would be 4 grotesques in a raider with a character or 2 characters, 10 models, or you could put 5 grotesques in a raider without any characters, which you can do. Remember though, they are leadership 4, so if you're going to do that out of the Dark Eldar book, make sure that you wait and make sure that you don't throw them against things they're going to lose combat against, because they will get pinned if their raider blows up quick. They will probably run away and all get killed if they lose combat. Now, where grotesques really shine are in the Coven Supplement book, because they're the exact same, except with the Coven detachment rules, they get to use the power from pain chart from the Covens, which means that starting on turn 2, they automatically become fearless. That alone increases the value of grotesques tenfold, because you do not require a character to babysit them. Then they can cause fear and they're fearless. Then they will gain It Will Not Die by turn 4. So if you have any ones that are wounded and you've been smart about making the closest model different, and you have different guys with few wounds here, you could slowly just regenerate them. And come to turn 6 and onwards, they have Eternal Warrior. 3 wounds, toughness 5, Eternal Warrior. Now, that is something that's scary. So, I've only ever used one unit in an army of Dark Eldar as a bodyguard for either Uri and Rakarth, because he makes them fantastic, or an Archon. And they kill stuff. They will go toe-to-toe with some of the nastiest things in the game and beat them to a bloody pulp. And I love it, because nobody thinks of Dark Eldar as a resilient army. It's all glass hammer, glass hammer, glass hammer. So it's interesting when you run a unit down their throat that is just tough as nails, and they have to invest a lot of strength and points to deal with this unit that, if left unchecked, will run rampart just from unit to unit to unit. So, if you're going to run one, I've seen them run on foot and just have 10 just run them up, right, and just really put the pressure on the opponent, kind of like supported with some Talos and maybe a Kronos to increase their Feel No Pain save to a 4+. Those are just some little tips and tricks. Other than that, just use them as a battering ram. They're fantastic to go in and have the enemy deal with them, and even if they all die at the end of the game, the rest of your army is doing all the work, objective grabbing, focusing on different targets. And the more resources your opponent pours into the grotesques, the more chances your army has of outmaneuvering the enemy, of getting a position where the rest of the army is doing all the damage, and the grotesques are just a thorn in your opponent's side. Now, be careful when you're running grotesques. You do not like anything that is strength 10 or higher, because it will kill grotesques like that really quickly. Beware Nurgle demon princes that can have the instant death touch sword, the Bale sword, just pop dead. So be careful with those. Things like Thunder Wolves with Power Fists, be careful, because they can really do some hurt on your grotesques. Things that you should not be afraid of are things like spawn, units of chaos spawn, because you can go in there and just instant kill them with your flesh gauntlets. Do not beware. At the same time, just practice with them, and then you'll know kind of like what they can take on and what they can't. I'm really curious to see what your thoughts are. As always, leave a comment down below to let me know what it is you think, how you think you'd be running your Grotesques. I know some people are going to run them with liquefy guns out of a webway portal to just flame stuff, but let me know what you think. As always, continue to watch the tactical series. We have a few things left to get through, but this is Skary, your grateful host. Appreciate your comments, your subscribing, your liking, and your favoriting, and I really appreciate you tuning in. Thanks a lot for watching. This is Skary, out.